오늘 여러분에게 아주 힘이 나는 용기를 주는 메시지를 전해주시려고 저 멀리 옥스퍼드에서 오신 시스템 생물학의 대가이시자 20대 때 네이처지에 논문을 2편이나 실리신 데니스 노블 교수님, 힘찬 박수로 맞이하시기 바랍니다.
안녕하십니까. So, facing the unknown. But what is facing the unknown? Because every unknown situation is different from every other. But there is a common reaction to it. That reaction is the terrible feeling in the depths of the body when your stomach feels that it's dropped below your boots. Your mouth goes dry and you break out in a cold sweat, and this is the physiological reaction of your body to the stark, naked fear with the question, what am I supposed to do? But often when this happens, there's no mum or dad to talk to you. You're on your own, facing the unknown. And it is unknown precisely because there is no immediate advice on what to do. You have to decide. And so, like a cat with its eyes shining and reflecting the blinding headlights of an oncoming vehicle, there is no time to waste. Quick! Snap decision, one way or the other. Standing still is not an option. My first piece of advice is this: welcome the experience of facing the unknown, because this is the kind of life experience that can help you to build your character for success in the future. Because how did others do it? Ask yourself the questions. What distinguishes high-level success? What enables high flyers like Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci or Charles Darwin to succeed? And the answer is they had to face the unknown. Of course, you can't face the unknown if you also don't know anything. So you need to learn things, very much so. Of course, you also need to mature in knowledge of the world and how it works. But knowledge and educational maturity on their own are not sufficient. The high flyers are those who have dared to face the unknown. Einstein did that when he had the idea of relativity. It was a leap of the imagination to think that space and time might not be what they thought they were. Because people before Einstein thought that there had to be something in space that makes space, a kind of invisible wind through which we move. People called it the ether. If there was an ether in space, even if we couldn't see it, it would make a difference whether we move with the ether or against it, like traveling with the wind or against it. But Einstein knew, you see, from a famous experiment that light travels the same speed in all directions. It doesn't depend on whether it was moving with the wind or against the wind. Yet a ship goes much faster when it's going with the wind. Einstein was a humble clerk in an office when he suddenly realized it might be better to assume that there was no wind in space. So he realized there was no ether. How did he do that? He couldn't have learnt that at school. Einstein thought by imagination. He used mathematics, of course, as he'd been taught, but he also imagined the strange mathematics that he needed to explain his new idea. And he used always to say, that he saw things in his head. He could imagine how space and time could become elastic, to expand and contract depending on how we move in it. Yet Einstein was not a high flyer at school. He even failed one of his university exams. The same was true of that other great genius, Leonardo da Vinci, because he must have often faced the unknown. He was not highly educated. By his own letters, we know that he struggled to understand and to write the common language of educated people at the time, which was Latin. In fact, far from being a highly educated man, he was a very practical man. He learned his skills in sculpture and painting as an apprentice. He also learnt how to dissect the body and how to build bridges and make canals. He must have been an assiduous apprentice to all the people he learnt his skills from. But he also had something in common with Einstein. He had imagination. And before he worked on a great piece of art, like the Last Supper or the Mona Lisa, he would sketch his ideas as they came to him. And where did the ideas come from? Certainly not from talking with Mum and Dad. In a letter, he describes his great fear once when, hiking in the hills, he came across a dark cave. And he wrote, "Bending back and forth, I tried to see whether I could discover anything inside, but the darkness within prevented that. And suddenly there arose two contrary emotions, fear and desire. Fear of the threatening cave, desire to see whether there was any marvelous thing within it. And desire won. He discovered a fossil whale. His interest in the anatomy of the body was kindled. We know the rest. He became the greatest anatomist of his time. So, how do we learn imagination and how to use it? The answer is simple. We learn to do it by doing it. Find time to let your mind wander. Find time for the imaginative arts like poetry, music, and dance. Because if you experience the joy of the imaginative arts, you have a better chance of becoming an imaginative person yourself. In fact, many of the best ideas have come to people when they were not actually thinking about the problem itself. They come after we have thought deeply about the problem. So facing the unknown requires the courage to know that you have to let your mind do what it does naturally, which is to imagine. Because there are many famous stories of scientists and artists struggling with problems there, facing the unknown. And often it was only after sleeping on the problem that they came to see the solution. I think that when we sleep on a problem, our mind continues to wander around in imagination, looking for new ways of seeing things. And what is dreaming, if not letting the mind wander? You see, we don't say we did a dream. We say we had a dream. So we didn't do it. What we did was to let our mind wander, and dreaming is that. So in addition to learning and deep study, include time for free-ranging mind wandering. As Leonardo da Vinci shows, an idea in science, for example, may come from letting your mind do something quite different. And it works the other way too, because when Charles Darwin wrote his great book, The Origin of Species, he often talked about the great beauty of nature. He wrote, "There is a grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one. And that while this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. He would not have used that word beautiful if he had not appreciated beauty in art, music, or dance. So to encourage imagination, let yourself become a rounded person. Certainly do what you want to do in life, but give time also for letting your mind feed on the ideas that come naturally when, having thought deeply about something, you are stuck, and the only way forward is to let the mind wander. You know, some people think that science and art are two quite different domains of life. I disagree, because there is an art to science, there is an art to discovery, but you don't learn it in the same way as you learn mathematics or physics or biology. The great thinkers and innovators in science cannot have done that, what they did simply by learning more. They had to face the unknown and to think of something that no one else had thought of before. So you don't study imagination, you just let your mind experience it. And that is why I advise giving time in life to poetry, music, and dance. You can also do it by practicing meditation. You have a great meditation tradition here in Korea. Your great 7th century monk Won Hyo certainly knew the value of meditation in facing the unknown, because I recently found that in one of his poems he had anticipated modern ideas about relativity and biology. He could not have done that without letting his mind wander through the realm of the imagination. The famous Beatles singer John Lennon must have done that when he wrote Imagine. He says himself that it was inspired by a poem that he happened to read in a book, and if he hadn't read that poem, he wouldn't have written one of the most famous songs in the world. Imagine, that is facing the unknown. 감사합니다.